Welcome back to the program, everybody. Great to be back in the beginning here of season 3. Thrilled to have my friend Michele Welsh here from Verdence Capital Advisors. Really interesting background, Michele. You've got some design and brand consultancy. You were the creative director at an audio hardware company. And offline, I do want to talk about Safety Tat. You were an entrepreneur for a number of years, built your own product in the child safety space and brought that to market. I'm sure fascinating story, lots of interesting learnings. And you're currently the CMO at Verdence Capital. You've been there for about 8 years. Tell us a little bit more about the company and a little bit more about your role.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for the introduction. All of those things accomplished, and yet I'm still in my 20s. So, a lot has happened.
Well, we all started when we were 5. I'm only
Exactly.
25 now.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I'll just start with a little bit about me. With regard to my role at Verdence, I really started in a non-traditional route to marketing and wealth management. Going back to studying at Ohio State, I'm an industrial design major, and not many people have heard of that, but industrial design is sort of a combination of design, marketing meets engineering. And really it's all about problem solving. And what I didn't realize at the time is how well it prepared me for so many other things by having sort of that problem solving mindset and being able to do it through design, through marketing, through writing. So really, really fortunate to have had that background.
Yep.
So fast forward, I've been with Verdence, as you said, for about 8 years. So my role as chief marketing officer is really, at the end of the day, it's to be the brand steward. It's to grow and protect the brand. And so what that means, and getting everyone on board to do that is to do so consistently. Our brand is one of our biggest trust assets. So if we are not showing up at an elevated level in everything that we do, it starts to look, it erodes our brand. So really that's sort of top down what my role is here at Verdence. With regard to who Verdence is, we're about a $5 billion RIA headquartered outside of Baltimore, Maryland, and with offices in Alexandria, Naples, and Boston. We work with high net worth, ultra high net worth business owners, entrepreneurs, generational wealth. So we work with people that have very, very sophisticated, complex financial problems, and we partner with them to be able to serve them and to solve those and to be their partner along the way.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks for the background, Michele. As we talked about some different things that you've done in your background, and I love the educational side, Ohio State, and how you brought that, the career development from that educational background. But specifically, maybe tell us a little bit about what pulled you into wealth management and ultimately why Verdence? Why was that the right place for you to come in and lead marketing?
Yeah, so I've spent my career both as a consultant and as in-house art director, creative director at other firms and consultancies, helping other people build their brands. So that's just been my portfolio for my entire career. So sort of serendipitous. I am friends with our CEO's wife. We have twins together. So we were twin moms together and just have known each other for many, many years, had, babies the same age, and we're sort of in the same, sharing tips with one another. And I knew Leo Kelly, the CEO, but only as Marcy's husband. I really didn't know him that well. He was in the process of, he's originally Merrill Lynch. So left Merrill Lynch and joined Hightower and was with Hightower from about 2012 to about 2017. When he was considering leaving Hightower, he realized I'm no longer going to have the Hightower brand. We need to have our own brand and no, it should not be Kelly Wealth Management anymore. We're bigger than that. So he had engaged a really reputable, very talented Baltimore firm to help him with that rebranding and to kind of think through naming, what does this look like? Can we do this? And he knew my background was in branding and design and marketing. So he said, I just have a few questions. Can you look at what I'm seeing and just help me understand it? Because it's a lot coming at you at once. So that was, someone asking me for my opinion. There are a few things that I enjoy more in life than just offering opinion, especially when it comes to branding, design, and marketing. And I really helped him through the process. And we ended up naming the firm together. I think one of the finalists was Cordance. as an alternative. And I said, it's just really not hitting me very well. And I was thinking about it. I said, what about green, like verdant and independence? Like, what if it's verdance? And so he said, I was thinking almost the same thing, but I was thinking more veritas, Latin for truth and
yeah.
independence. So it was just the strangest thing. We came up with the same name at the same time. So that was just, we really enjoyed working together. He invited me to lunch to say, I have a few follow-up questions. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've put in. And during lunch, I said, why does this feel like you're interviewing me? What's going on here? And he said, I'm trying to offer you a job. To which I said, I already have a job. I was running Safety Tat. I was the CEO there and very happy with what I was doing. And if you've ever, and I think you have, Dan, I think you have met Leo Kelly. He can be very convincing. Mm-hmm. And really the vision that he helped me see was Safety Tat was great because it's a child safety product and my kids were the absolute target audience, but I was starting to outgrow it. And he said, I think you might be more challenged here. And I ended up accepting, and here we are today.
8 years later.
8 years later.
Love the background. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little tech stack. So love the focus on the brand, by the way, and for all the right reasons. And spending that time figuring out what the name is and what the name means and what the name will evolve to mean to clients, super important. But I think as important is the tech stack that you've built. I think it's pretty impressive. We've talked about it a number of times in the past. Maybe for the audience, you can walk us through what you've put in place. And maybe because we'd like to talk about AI, we can't not talk about AI. But maybe talk a little bit about what you're actually using day to day to drive growth at Verdence.
Yes, absolutely. And I really do. I have such an interest in technology and what it can do for us. One of the challenges is, especially as marketing people, there's no shortage of technology solutions. So we are looking at, hundreds of different tools that can do different things and, chasing the next shiny object. So really the way we approached it is looking at it from a strategy first perspective, thinking about our bottlenecks, thinking about ways that we could accelerate some of the functions that we were already doing, the jobs that we were doing, and looking for the tool that would help us to solve those strategically. So that's sort of where it started. But, you and I have talked in the past, we use a kind of a platform for looking at some of these tools, and it's the AAI structure, invented here, but it just helps to keep us focused. So when we're evaluating a tool, AAI, will it accelerate what we're doing? Will it make what we're doing more accurate? Or will it help us innovate? And so it has to kind of go through those filters first. So having said all of that, we have what I think is a very robust kind of tech stack, starting with those accelerating kind of things, the accelerators that we use, which includes AI. On the image generation and video generation side, we produce all of our own podcasts and videos in-house. And as you know, that's a pretty heavy time lift. So any tools that help us to accelerate that process are really valuable.
We've talked about this before, and one of the things that sort of struck me is that as you stated, we focus on the need. What problem do we seek to solve? What opportunity do we seek to get after? And you used a phrase when we were chatting earlier about building with purpose. So finding the right technology to build with purpose, to solve that specific need or open up that opportunity. The notion of AAI, accelerate, automate, innovate, I love that as a framework against which you can look at technology and figure out what's my problem. Is this something that I can help accelerate? Is it something to help automate what I'm doing? Is it something I can leverage to innovate? So appreciate that.
Yes, of course. And it's interesting too. Sometimes there are solutions out there just looking for problems. So that's a really easy trap to get caught in.
The shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive a little deeper on AI, because I think you've done some things, and I've talked to a lot of folks that sit in your seat. You've done a lot of interesting things on the AI, so I want to dive a little bit deeper. You spent a fair amount of time, in my opinion, relative to the market in training tools on your brand. We've talked about brand and the importance of brand and how that's supposed to connect and create trust with the client and the prospect. So brand and voice. Maybe you could share a little bit more on what you've done in training some of the models.
Yes, sure. So, one of the challenges or shortcomings, it's quickly improving, is the empathy part of any AI tool. So, if you're asking it to create content, it really needs you as the empathetic voice. And we look, and I'll share another adage that we use here, and that's we use the platinum rule. And this applies for AI as well. So, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have done for you. The platinum rule is do unto others as they would choose to have done for them. And by and I actually have that phrase and that mantra in projects. So I really want it to look at empathetic statements, really put empathy at the center, because once you do that, you can take what's, very robotic, and make it into something that's just much more personal and much more relevant. So we've spent years in not only training the tool. I've uploaded everything that I could from our chief investment officer to train the tool on her tone of voice, to put everything that I've written to train it on my tone of voice and my writing style. I've uploaded all of the SEC guidelines, especially with regard to the advertising rule. And then I have a list, not kidding, it's probably 5 pages long at this point, of never, ever, ever, ever say these things when you're giving me results. Like, I don't want to see the word delve. I don't want you to start any email. I hope this email finds you well. The M dashes just crop up everywhere. The icons drive me crazy. So it's almost like this is my rant page in the training part of any of these AI tools. But it's really important. And it's interesting. I just attended an AI webinar yesterday, and it was talking about prompt engineering. And it's something that I've always done, but I've never phrased it like this. And I'll share it with you. So it's, remember the Spice Girls?
Sure.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's you have to tell the tools, tell it what you want, what you really, really want. And you have to be very, very specific. You can't outsource your strategy. You have to teach it to go by what you've always done, as a purist, as a marketer, the things that need to be put in place. And I think when you spend that time up front, we have lazy prompts and thoughtful prompts. The lazy prompts will get the job done. Will it be relevant? Will it sound like everyone else? Probably. But the really more sophisticated prompts and kind of building that, I call it rapport, but the rapport with the tool, it really helps to give you better results. And once you put the upfront training in, the rest of it, what is it? It's like hire difficult and manage easy. It's sort of the same thing.
The notion of giving it that data, giving it everything that you've written, you've said, trained on your voice, trained on your CIO's voice, background, presentation, what's delivered, critical. And then the prompting obviously is the challenging part once that's all done. So maybe let's get into a use case or two, if we could. Something that you shared with me, and I think you and I are both data driven. We look to the data to give us guidance. And you were telling me a story about leveraging AI to and feeding it data, all anonymized, of course, but feeding it data to create unique visualizations of your work as the CMO. Tell us a little bit more about what you did there and the outcomes.
Yeah, and you hit the most important part, and that's protecting your PII. Making sure also, I think for everyone listening, they're probably already doing this, but paying for the tool is also very important. Then they don't use your data to train their model and they don't make it public. I always say that if you aren't paying for the tool, you are the tool.
You're the product.
You are the product. So if we look at it that way, so by anonymizing our CRM data, that's the first critical step. But I want to keep in there things that are really important: market segmentation, lead source, value of the household value, anything that might help me to connect some dots.
Mm-hmm.
But what this tool is able to do for us is to give us some visibility into our CRM, and really helpful One, it serves as kind of a report card for the advisor's CRM. How valuable is the data? How complete is the data that you have? But it helps us look at other really important factors. Who is your book of business? Because sometimes, Dan, it'll surprise some of the advisors once you show them the data behind, I have to share a funny story, and I won't mention names, but one of our advisors, just such a nice guy. And I said, who's your ideal client? And he said, I do really well with business owners. And I said, well, that's interesting because your data says that you do really well with older women, widows. And he said, they do love me. I said, it shows you do really well. So instead of trying to be something that he thought in his mind was ideal for him, lean into what you're already doing well at and develop that. So he joined a pickleball club. I mean, he's now says, I have something to offer here and I have some expertise within this group. I love knowing this. So that's just one example. But back to sort of the visibility and the dashboards that you can create. I can tell them how many clients they have. I can tell them the activity. Is the activity telling us something that we should be really listening to? I can cross-reference things like AUM with age, with other things that we can start to compare in ways that we wouldn't have been able to normally. I can show them where their gaps are. I can show them, what tools they're leveraging, what they're not leveraging in terms of how they're building their business. Are you really nurturing your centers of influence? Are you getting more client referrals? And so it helps us to take a deep dive into their book of business, and it helps to remove all opinion, bias. Like the data is the data, it's black and white. So those are some of the use cases that I'm most excited about right now. It's just that visibility into the book of business.
Many years ago, somebody said to me that keystrokes don't lie. So capturing that data and being able to report on it, is a source of truth. Two quick questions. One of the things that you had mentioned in a prior conversation is leveraging sentiment. So is that are the advisors putting more information relative to sentiment on calls with maybe prospects, existing clients, things like that? And are you then leveraging that sentiment in how they might prepare for a follow-up conversation?
So we are in our infancy of doing that. And I think having, note takers, the meeting note takers is really helping, especially as that has the integration with the CRM. But we're still building that. I would consider that to be well in its infancy. What I have done that has been incredibly helpful is I've used AI to scrape data in the ways that I really want to capture sentiment from other kind of conversations online, from social media. And what you can do, or what anyone can do, and what we've done is just kind of look at what are people complaining about with their financial advisor? What are they worried about when it comes to a business transaction? All the things that you try to get inside someone's mind in the absence of surveys. You can really gain a lot of information by really measuring that sentiment, both online and through your CRM. And in our case, we've learned a lot through external sources rather than directly through the Verdence client database.
So another follow-up on this topic is changing behavior. So as you've put this together, and I suspect that with the example of the advisor you talked about, thinking their best focus area is business owners, and then finding out that it's divorced older women. Has it changed their behavior relative to how they're using the tools, both for input? CRMs can be difficult at times to use, and it's a follow-up thing that I think a lot of people don't like to do. But has it changed behavior in terms of how they're leveraging the tools, both post conversation or engagement, and then in prepping for a follow-up conversation?
Yeah. So with regard to the advisors and the adoption rate of, making full data in their CRM, for years, we've just really encouraged and educated, and, that was okay. It wasn't super effective, to be honest. Then I've tried to show them, okay, if we have clean data, here's what we can do. And they started to get a little more interested because so many advisors they they know their spreadsheets and they know they can rely on their spreadsheets. The CRM tool is a little bit of a gray area, and they understand the importance. They know that they should be using it. As we started to put our data lake in place, and they knew how important data, clean data, was to that process. I finally said, and this has been the most effective thing. I've gotten so much adoption even in the last 6 months. Thank you, everyone, for your diligence in recording everything in CRM and making sure your data is clean. For those of you who have done this, I'm going to bring you along with me. For those of you who haven't, we can't wait. We can't wait for you.
So carrot versus stick.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm a carrot person, but
for sure.
And people understood because, even if they haven't used some of the automation workflows, et cetera, tools, they've heard about it. And they think, I want to be a part of that. And when I said, you can't, because, we can't put bad data through these automations we can't amplify bad data because we just make more bad data. And that really resonated with people. And I think people are seeing too, even with regard to the note takers for meeting prep, for being able to be active listeners during a conversation with a client. I love it for my own meetings because I'm a note taker and I try to write down everything, but I'm 2 sentences behind, and I have to, re-engage. I think it's really helpful for me to be an active listener as it is for other advisors so that they can really focus on their conversation rather than documenting everything.
Yeah. And then having that connection to the output, again, to that example and what they're doing with it. I love the fact that the advisor joined a pickleball league.
Yes.
To better connect with prospective future clients.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, love that full circle story there. So let's move into tactics. Curious if you can share with us what you think is actually moving the needle. I think the industry talks about personalization. I think there's more conversations now happening about CAC. I know you measure everything. What's moving the needle, and what does all that look like within Verdence?
Yeah, and I'll start with a cautionary tale, and that is as we've started to really commit to our digital marketing platforms and capturing data. I mentioned earlier that I did not come from the wealth management industry, so I was so impressed with the level of service that we offer our clients. I was so impressed with our financial planning platform. I thought, my job is going to be easy. All I have to do is get people to recognize the brand, and this is a done deal. And so getting into the digital marketing platforms as we did, I assumed that once we started with brand recognition, people would convert right away. Because of course, I find everything we do so incredibly valuable. I know everyone else will as well. And that was a mistake. And I called 2024 our tuition year because we got tons and tons of clicks and just metrics and impressions. I mean, in the hundreds of thousands, but nothing really resulted. And we really, took a look inside and put my ego aside. And I said, well, all right, we need more romance. We need to add more romance to this process because we can't show up and ask someone to get married on the first date. I get it. And we really built in the nurture that we're doing. So when you ask what's moving the needle, I think ultra high net worth is all relationships, and it takes a long time to build trust, as it should. So we need to show up and just avail like any kind of education that we can offer people, invitations to connect with us without feeling like we're selling them something, because they're really not. We're really not. So trying to build in that kind of romance in the process and keep things on a slow but steady basis. We've removed a lot of the friction. I know that's just sort of a cliche term now, but really getting out of our own way, putting those calls to action in a place where people can see them, actually inviting them to reach out to us and making sure they know that they are welcome and, we're here without them feeling pressured to do so has really gone a long way. So those are kind of on the digital marketing side, what's moving the needle. We're also getting very, very specific about advertising. We've narrowed our audience very much so. And I have a great digital marketing specialist who could probably sit down and talk to you for a full hour about everything that she does with our data and customizations and personalizations. But it's really helped us. So as we stand here today, we're not getting the clicks and impressions that we once were in 2024. But of those we're getting, they're much more valued, more valuable, much more high intent people that are actually looking for financial advice. And so that's been really helpful.
Could you talk maybe just a minute on, I wrote down a note when we were chatting last about leading with education, not sales. And I suspect when we talk about high net worth individuals, they don't want to be sold. They want to develop the relationship. They want to understand who you are as a brand and how you might be able to help them. I suspect that's what's behind the notion of leading with education, not sales. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. And I think this is just sort of a multi-pronged kind of approach. If you had talked to me 5 years ago, I would have said, here's a shiny brochure and a long form video. You are welcome. That's how we really kind of used to speak with clients, maybe 8 years ago. And now people absorb and they digest news and information in so many different ways. So we need to show up in all those different ways. So we need to show up in long form for the people that really want the video. We need to just show up in written because the people that are really interested in knowing all the facts. We also need to show up in very short form too, whether that's a short clip, a quote, a summary. So we have to hit all those different kind of touch points because you don't know when you're going to reach the right person at the right time. And I always say to our advisors, 99% of the people that we're talking with online are not looking for an advisor, but we want to be the first person that they think of when they are looking for an advisor. So that's sort of the baseline. But providing very thoughtful education in advance. So I just look to our advisors to say, what do you do better than any other advisor on the planet? What's your strong suit? Let me help you to develop that voice, that authority, and let's develop a piece together that we can start to educate. And let's start with what are people struggling with? What's keeping them up at night? And for instance, for some of our ultra high net worth clients, that one of the biggest things we hear is, I'm afraid this money is really going to mess up my kids. And they're not wrong. So it's really pulling information out of the advisors' brains and helping them to put that in a way that we can lead with that education. So they're educating their clients. They give and give and give, and they really don't ask. And I think that works very well for them. They just know that they're going to show up and they're going to be a reliable, trusted voice. And so when the client is ready or the prospective client is ready, they know that we're here. We've taken out all the barriers and we're ready.
You go to the trust when you need it, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe talk to us a little bit about, you've done some work, very deliberate work, I believe, in AEO, GEO. I'm not sure which of those we're going to ultimately adopt, but
EIO.
Yeah, EIO. But you've done some great work, and I know you're tracking rankings. Tell us a little bit about what you did there and some of the results you're seeing.
Yeah, well, I think at least for us, and maybe other people can identify with this as well, it just seemed a little bit elusive, like this ethereal thing that was happening, almost like SEO, back in the day when you would try to work on that. But we really started to wrap our heads around it, and it made sense to me. We all know that the way people are searching for information is rapidly changing. They're going to the AI, to the large language models first versus Google. They're using that information to do research, and they trust it because it summarizes it for them, and they're not being advertised to, at least not yet. So we recognized that shift was happening, easily 2 years ago. So what we started to do is just really get smart on it and figure out what are the triggers, what are they looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is, a few things that seemed just very intuitive, and that's making sure you're speaking in real authentic language, the way that someone would ask a chat, an LLM, that talk the way they would talk. Don't try to make it too overly formal. Don't try to use too many big words and acronyms that nobody's going to understand. So that's the first step. The second is to make sure that we're including frequently asked questions. And that's really important. And it was described to me, not my words, but that the large language models are a little bit lazy. So they want the full thing. They want the question and the answer. And that's just easier for them to pick up and put down. And they look at other things and trust signals as well before they choose your frequently asked questions. But that's really helpful. Having schema markup.
Mm-hmm.
so that it understands what it's looking at. Don't make it guess. So those are kind of the three big things that we started working on a few years ago. And the results have been really outstanding. In fact, there were three big wins that we realized recently. And oh, by the way, when you're working on AEO or GEO, so showing up in answer engines, it helps your search engine optimization just by nature. So we are ranking in the top 1, 2, 3, 4 in Gemini results for what is a fiduciary and custodial Roth IRA. So that was huge wins for us. And just coincidentally, we're also ranking in number 1 organic search in Google for custom family office, which is a phrase that we coined years ago because we're not a single family office. We're not really a multi-family office. We're a custom family office. And our head of family office says, when you've met one family office client, you've met one family office client. There's no two are the same. So that really was the motivation behind really, it's a custom family office. We do serve many families, so that makes it multi, but we give the service and attention and customization as you might get with a single family office. So those are our three big wins in search and AI.
Awesome. Congrats. Cause I know it's not easy. And I think, reflecting on this conversation and conversations we've had in the past, one thing is pretty clear to me about you and about the work you do, that it's evolutionary, not necessarily revolutionary. Perhaps the market in wealth management marketing may look at it as revolutionary, but you're taking the time and being really disciplined about the approach that you take across the board, whether it's channel, whether it's approach. And I think this is a really good example. You're talking about the work that you started 2 years ago to get to a point where you're starting to see that success today. And it's not something you can just prompt today and have results tomorrow. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah, and you hit something so important, and that's discipline. And I think that where people they not give up, but they just get impatient. And having that discipline to know that what I'm doing today, it's almost like long-term financial planning. If I have a goal and I know it's going to take time to reach that goal, then I'm going to do all the incremental steps that it takes to get to the goal. It's the same with marketing and everything that you do for search engine optimization or AEO. But I think when people aren't seeing immediate return on investment, immediate results, like why aren't we at the top of Google yet? We just added the page 2 days ago, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So when you think about it in terms of long-term financial planning, people start to understand that. They can wrap their heads around that, at least internally here.
I like what you just did there, Michele. You brought it back to the goal of the business, the model itself. So I love it.
Yeah.
So last question for you. And as we're thinking about spending 2 years and really being thoughtful about planning what we're doing in terms of attracting an audience, building that brand and that trusted brand. Last question is, if you knew then what you know now, what is something that you would have stopped or started to do 5 years ago in your current role?
Well, I guess 5 years ago it was just before AI, just slightly before AI. But had I known then, I would have jumped in with both feet very early on, which we did, but I would have dedicated more time to it. I thought it was just something interesting that might be a passing fad. But I think what I would have done, and if I were to sit down and talk with my past self, is don't always shoot for perfection. I'm a perfectionist. I know that. Most of the marketing people that you talk with are perfectionists. And I think that really moving ahead is so important, that we get wrapped up in analysis paralysis or whatever you want to call it. But I think that kind of allowing yourself to move forward when you're making progress and allow yourself to improve as you go is important. And, full circle back to, I said, 5 or 10 years ago, I would have handed you a shiny brochure and said, this is my marketing. That you can't change. We are living in such a beautiful time right now that everything we're doing can be changed. It's all digital. If I don't like my web page today, I can adjust it. If I don't really like, if my message isn't resonating because people either aren't understanding or aren't taking action, I can change it. So I think getting yourself out there, learning, making mistakes, don't go for perfection, because really, if you do everything perfect, what are you actually learning? I learned the best things, like my tuition year in 2024. That was not perfection, but I really learned so much, and I won't make that mistake again.
I worked with a CTO years ago, and he had this mantra: fail fast and scale fast. So
I love that.
just embrace the failures, because we have to learn. We don't know everything. So
Yes, fail fast and scale fast. I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind.
all yours, all yours. Well, Michele, thank you so much for joining me on the program today.
It was a
It's
pleasure.
great to see you, great to chat with you, and thanks for sharing all this insight and knowledge on everything that you've built, and continued good luck.
All right. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Organically podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit catchlight.ai, where you can access all our podcasts, including show notes and other resources to keep learning. This podcast was produced by Catchlight Insights, LLC. It is for informational and educational purposes only. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer or recommendation of any securities and is not intended to provide tax, legal, or investment advice. The views expressed are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of Catchlight or its affiliates, and are as of the date indicated, based on the information available at that time, and may change based on market or other conditions. Catchlight does not assume any duty to update any of the information. Catchlight and other third parties mentioned in the podcast are independent entities and not affiliated. Catchlight does not endorse any investment advisor or provide advice or recommendations to any prospective or existing client of an investment advisor as to the selection or retention of that investment advisor. This information is not intended for any person or entity in any jurisdiction where the distribution or use of such information would be contrary to local law. Third-party trademarks referenced herein are the property of their respective owners. All others are the property of Catchlight Insights, LLC. Copyright 2025, Catchlight Insights, LLC. All rights reserved.